and that is our time now on Friday, the 3rd of October, for the Budget Committee to be in sitting. So good morning to everyone. Welcome. We welcome to the honourable members and welcome to the teams from Provincial Treasury and from the Auditor General. I am Leon van Wyk, the Chair of the Budget Committee, and I will now allow the members to introduce themselves, both within the chamber and on the online platform. And thereafter, I will hand over to Provincial Treasury and to the Auditor General's team to introduce themselves. So I'm going to Member Boyson.
Good morning, Chairperson, and morning, colleagues, and morning to the professionals. I'm Member Boyson, and I'm an alternate member of this committee.
Morning, everybody. I'm Benedicta van Minnen, and I am a permanent member of this committee.
Morning, Chairperson, everybody. Dave Bryant.
We can now go on to the online platform.
Morning, Chair. Morning. Morning, Chair. Morning, Department. It's Noma French Mbombo, the member of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and colleagues. Basil Petrus, member.
Good morning, Chairperson. Wendy Kaiser-Philander, alternate member.
Good morning, Chairperson. Derek Wessels, and I'm also an alternate member. Thanks.
Good morning, Chairperson. Oh.
Can proceed.
Good morning, Chair. Beauty Stoffel, member of the committee.
Morning, Chair. I'm Nomi Kodlo, also member of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Johnson, alternate member of the committee, and I will be joining you in the chambers shortly. Thank you.
I can hand over to Provincial Treasury now.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Isaac Smith. I will be leading the Provincial Treasury team. I also just need to apologize for my head official. You know, there was a meeting settled in Pretoria that she had to attend, and we just heard it was cancelled. So, yeah, and I'm just going to allow my other colleagues to introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ilam Jurams from the Provincial Treasury.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. My name is Victor Senna, the Deputy Director General responsible for Fiscal and Economic Services.
Good morning, Chair and members. Malcolm Boyson from Public Policy Services.
Good morning, everyone. Cheryl Richard, Provincial Government Accounting and Compliance, PT.
Good morning, members and everyone. My name is Tsepo Mutlomi, Auditor General Office. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson and the members. My name is Zinem Vimbeli. I'm the acting SLM in the AGSA.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. My name is Sangita Callan. I'm the Business Unit Leader from the Auditor General.
Good morning, Chair. My name is, and Honourable Members, my name is Ashley Olkers. I'm a Deputy Business Unit Leader from the Auditor General's Office.
Good morning, Chair and Honourable Members. My name is Thomas Mamokwe. I'm the Deputy Business Unit Leader from the AGSA.
Thank you very much for that. I think just in terms of apologies, Minister Bartman has indicated apologies. We've also heard from the HOD from Provincial Treasury. The Honourable Moraes also sent us apologies, and as well as Member Letekong from the EFF. I'm also aware that Member Wessels has to attend another meeting at 9:30. With me, I have Mr. Dustin Davids, the Procedural Officer. I think we can move directly into the business of the day, and that will be a briefing by Provincial Treasury on the 24-25 annual report process, pertaining then to the departments and the various entities of the provincial government of the Western Cape. I think we have a presentation before us, and Mr. Smith has indicated that possibly they won't go into all the detail within this document, because that could be quite lengthy, and therefore just cover at the level of depth that is probably necessary. So I think with that, I think I'll hand over to you, Mr. Smith, and then perhaps just to give that introduction. And then after that briefing, we'll deal with the Auditor General's briefing. But I think we'll take questions after the Provincial Treasury one. And as the arrangement is, the members will ask the questions once the briefing has been done.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members, and thank you for allowing us to do this presentation. I will be supported by Ilham, who is the Acting Director Financial Accounting, and also Cyril at the back of me. As you've indicated, we've got a comprehensive a presentation that we've circulated, and we will also then go quickly through the content. But I'll follow your lead, Chair, in terms of how quickly we go to a document. This is an annual process where we report to the various committee, the SCOPA as well as the Budget Committee. And then, of course, it also includes the standing committees as well. Next. So basically, the annual report is in line with the guidance from the National Treasury. And of course, as you're well aware, it includes significant achievements as far as performance, governance, and human resource information is concerned. And of course, this is also reports that's audited and run through by the AG. So in terms of the next slide, just to indicate to you that this is the end of the accountability loop. As you're well aware, we've got a budget and accountability cycle. In fact, in any particular point in the year, we deal with 3 financial years. The 24-25 that have ended now, but also the implementation of the 25-6 budget, and then of course preparation for the 26-27 as well. But as indicated, this particular report is the end of the accountability loop, and it's an annual review in terms of what happened in the 24-25 financial year. Next one. Just in terms of the committee oversight, and I've referred to the various committees, is basically to evaluate all information in the annual reports of the departments, and though that process will start soon, particularly as far as the financial statements are concerned and the performance information. And then of course also, in terms of prior decisions that were made by the committee. Then also part of the process, if there are any other questions that the committee wants to pose, that from a provincial treasury, we're there then to support the committee as far as that is concerned. So that is just a short introduction in terms of the accountability loop and also the functions of the committee. So we will go now into the meat of the annual report and the various sections in the annual report. And I'm just going to ask Ilham to start with the next section. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Chair. So between the next section, the outline will cover parts A to F. It will be done. The first A to C I will cover myself, and then Cheryl will take the members through D to F. With part A, which is the general information, it just covers your standard sections in terms of names of the department and entity, address, contact information, your list of abbreviations that is being used, the forward by the ministers or MEC if it is for an entity, the report back from the accounting officer, the statement of responsibility and confirmation of accuracy, the strategic overview, which covers the vision, mission, and values, legislative and mandates that is governed by the department as well as the entity. Then any structural, your organizational structure would be, the latest one would be included as part of Part A, and then any other entities reporting to the relevant minister would be listed under that section as well. As we move to Part B, this is a bit of a lengthy section, which is the performance information. This section also covers, it serves as a critical role just to demonstrate how a department or an entity had undergone the activities for the year, how they had performed against what they had planned to perform. So all this information is covered under Part B. What also just to note with Part B as well, I'm also controlling the presentation, so my apologies. What also is important to note that the information under Part B, it is predetermined objectives is audited as part of the financial statements, and any information, material findings that comes through over there would be indicated under this section. So it is important to look out if there is any material findings that has been raised. This will come through in the audit report, and it will be sitting under the section reporting and other legal and statutory requirements. Under that heading, you will find any information over there. What is also included under Part F is an overview of the provincial, departmental or entities' performance. It covers key focus areas such as service delivery environment, any changes that may have come through there. It also speaks to the service delivery improvement plan, which outlines how a department or an entity would then also want to engage with its stakeholders, the main services and standards, and also any complaints mechanisms as well. The next focus area under Part B speaks to your organizational environment, and over here it's an overview of any challenges that may have been experienced and any successes that may have also been experienced for that particular reporting period. Key policy developments as well as any legislative changes also is indicated under this section, and there a description is required of what those key policy developments or legislative changes was. Also, just to run through Part B as well, there is linkages to the performance with budget information, which also is a very critical section. And this section covers a summary of the actual expenditure that has been incurred against what was the, my apologies. It provides a summary of the actual expenditure that has been undertaken for the year in comparison to any adjustments that was made to the budget as well. It reflects also the sub-program level information, and it's important to note that this needs to agree to the appropriation statement, which is found in part of the audited financial statements under Part F, and any reasons for variations should then also be linked to any discussion points that is made under the section speaking to your organizational environment and your service delivery environment as well. What is also just to note that the departments or entities also required to report on how the expenditure contributed to the achievements of the particular outputs as well. Under this section, another focus area that speaks to the strategy to overcome any areas of underperformance, and this needs to be indicated and addressed in this document as well under this section. And then as we move over to the next slide, what is also covered under Part B is any transfer payments that has been made. So transfer payments made to the public entities, as well as any transfer payments that was made to other organizations other than your public entities as well. Details of that information is then provided and should be reflected under this section. And also any comments around the monitoring system or lack thereof of the monitoring system should come through in this particular section of the annual report. The next section speaks to the conditional grants, which also requires the departments to be indicating that. Under the conditional grant section, an overview is required of the grants received, including the types, the total allocations, and any transfer trends that needs to come through, needs to be reflected over here. The summary of grants should be provided as well as which links up to the annexures in the annual report. And then what most importantly, the purpose and expected outcomes for each of these particular grants also needs to be indicated under this particular section. Any explanations where transfers was made as scheduled and maybe was delayed or withheld needs to be commented on in this section. And any portions of grants that may have been retained at a national level also needs to come through this particular section as well. Analysis on spending trends for each grant, extent to which objectives were then achieved, linked to the particular grant received as well, and any reasons or measures taken to improve any other performance all fits under that particular focus area under Part B. We're also then looking at conditional grants and earmarked funds. And very similar to my previous slide as well, where we need to give an overview of the grants received and indications as to how the grants was then spent and linked up, and any reasons around the overall performance of it needs to also come through in terms of that. The next focus area is your donor funds. Obviously, these funds are your financial contributions received from external parties, like such as foreign governments or any international organizations. And you need to, under this particular section, any donor assistance that was provided needs to be indicated over here. These assistance can be in cash as well as it can be in kind. So both of those type of donations needs to, or donor funds need to be indicated and reported on under this part of, under this section under Part B. The next section I'll be looking at is capital investment. This is quite a bit of bullet points sitting over here, but most importantly, just to note that any progress on implementing the capital investment and asset management plan needs to be indicated in this particular section. Infrastructure products that was completed in the current year and the progress thereof needs to come through. Infrastructure projects that is currently in progress, as I've indicated, if there was any plans for close down or delays, if there was any maintenance backlogs or any unexpected developments, also need to come through from this particular section. The department and also entities also need to indicate measures that was taken and ensure that these are all aligning to the asset registers, as well as this is a countermeasure to double check what is sitting over here as well as what is sitting in your annual financial statements for this particular section. Comments around the major maintenance projects undertaken, including, as I've said, any progress or any progress linking to maintenance backlogs, all need to be reported on by the department and entity under this particular section. I will then be moving to Part C, which is the governance information section. And this part also, serves to provide a transparent account of the governance structures and practices that is in place, as well as the compliance mechanisms that a department and an entity needs to follow. The first one we'll be touching on is the risk management area. And over here, what we will be seeing, what needs to come through in the annual report into this section is a brief description of the following. For the risk management, where the department has a plan and policy in place and a strategy, and how that implementation is working, what conduct, whether the department does regular assessments in terms of this type of the risk management assessment, whether there is a risk management committee that advises the management in terms of the overall system of risk management, especially mitigating any unacceptable levels of risk. What is also important is whether the audit committee advises the department or entity around risks as well. This needs to come through if that is undertaken by that particular committee as well. The fraud and corruption, next focus area, there needs to be a brief description on the mechanisms that are in place to prevent fraud and corruption. There needs to be an indication that there is a fraud prevention plan and how this plan has been implemented during the financial year, and how these cases was then reported on and any actions that was taken coming through from this committee. Most important to note, any minimizing of any conflict of interest also needs to come through in the commentary under this section. There needs to be a brief description on the processes that have been implemented, as well as the processes followed where conflict of interest has been identified. The next section speaks to the code of conduct, and over here there needs to be a brief description as well as the nature around the code of conduct and ethics that has taken effect or that has impacted during this particular financial year. Discussions around processes that was followed, if there was any breaches, also needs to come through. Health and safety as well as environmental issues is another important area where there needs to be an indication of a description of the nature of any issues that may have resulted or come into effect in terms of health and safety and environmental matters. Portfolio committees needs to exercise their oversight over the service delivery service delivery performance of departments and entities, as well as provide commentary on the following, the dates of the meetings that has happened, as well as any matters that is coming through importantly from this. As indicated, any scope resolutions that may have come through in this financial year that needed to be affected needs to also be spoken to under this particular section. Any prior modifications to audit reports will fall under Part C as well. I'm not going to delve into that one. We're not in our province, that has not been an indication for us to speak to on that one. And then lastly, we've got the internal control unit as well. There needs to be a description of the work as performed by this particular unit during the financial year, as well as when it comes to internal audit and the audit committees, there needs to be a brief description on the key activities that has been undertaken, the summary of the audit work that was done, the key objectives and activities of the audit committee itself, as well as the attendance around those particular committee meetings. The last slide that I will be speaking to speaks to the triple BEE compliance, and this is also a compliance section. So as part of the annual report, Annex D is provided, and that is a template that is completed by our departments and entities on this section, and the items that it speaks to or needs to be followed and answered in that section is the determination qualification criteria when issuing of licenses, developing and implementing of preferential procurement policies, determining application criteria for the sale of state-owned enterprises, and then lastly, just the determining criteria of awarding any incentives. I shall now be handing over to my colleague Sherelle, who will be taking the committee through parts D, E, and F. Thank you.
Good morning once again, Chairperson and honorable members. I will be covering Part D, E, and F. So Part D, specifically in terms of the human resource management, and this section specifically is prescribed by the Minister of Public Service and Administration. On the slide currently, you will see there's a lot of bullets, but mainly it summarizes the status of the human resources. It also goes into the human resources priorities, recruitments, and then it also highlights the achievements and challenges that the department or public entity might have. So you will see the detail on that slide. Next one, Ilam. In terms of the section as well, there's a specific focus in terms of senior management services, and it specifically zooms into the triple BE performance management when it comes to the SMS members. And to note, there is a review in terms of the SMME performance agreements that's signed annually on the 31st of May each year. And also important section is the filling of the SMS posts, which is very important, and therefore review is done mid-year through, so a review on 30 September as well as on the 31st of March, the end of the financial year. Also, reasons for complying with the prescribed timeframes for filling of SMS posts is also important for the departments. The next slide is on labor relations and skills development, which is also part of the HR. And under this section, there's a specific focus in terms of the collective agreements with unions, and the information needs to be provided in terms of misconduct and disciplinary. There's also a section where it needs to be completed in terms of grievances and disputes that might arise, and also if there's any strike actions. The last section under Part D is with regards to skills development, which is very important. So here there will be a specific focus in terms of training, and that will be linked to the work skills plan that is in place. There's also a part that needs to be completed in terms of the number of officials that attended the training interventions. The next part is Part E, the PFMA compliance report, and this section is specifically guided in terms of our PFMA compliance and reporting framework. This section specifically focuses on irregular, fruitless, wasteful, and unauthorized expenditure. We also look at material losses. Just to note, before I go into the slide, when it comes to public entities, unauthorized expenditure is not applicable because unauthorized expenditure is when there's an overspend in terms of the vote. So on this slide, when it comes to the annual report with UIFWE, unauthorized, irregular, and fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, It's mainly the same for all three categories. The difference you will note when it comes to condonation. So fruitless and wasteful expenditure and unauthorized expenditure don't get condoned. So you will see bullet 3 under the first block, as well as the last bullet is the difference between these three categories. So when it does come to the annual report, the cases that's confirmed will be included under assessment, determination, and investigation. Also, when it was condoned by the relevant authority, we also look at the transfer for receivables and the recoveries. Written off is also important and needs to be followed in terms of the principle guided in the PFMA compliance and reporting framework. And then also the guide do indicates the steps when it comes to when the authority don't condone the irregular expenditure and what the process is to remove it. So just important to note that as well. The next slide is specifically in terms of information on late or non-payment of suppliers. So it is important as per the legislation as well that our departments do pay the suppliers within the 30-day period. Under this section, the accounting officers and accounting authorities needs to indicate the number and rand value of all invoices that were received for that financial year. Also, in terms of which invoices were paid within the 30-day period, as well as after the 30-day period. Then there's also specific requirements in terms of 30-day, more than 30-day late payments or in excess of the period that was agreed with the supplier in the contract. And in that section also, there needs to be reasons in terms of why this invoices is still unpaid and if there is any disputes with the supplier. So the section split in terms of unpaid without disputes as well as unpaid with disputes. The last requirement of this section is specifically in terms of the narrative, which is very important in terms of why the suppliers were paid late. The last slide on part E is with regards to supply chain management. And under this section, you will know there's a specific focus, chairperson and honorable members, in terms of procurement by other means. And this procurement by other means will be the limited bid emergency procurement, anything other than the open bidding process. And it is required that the accounting officers and accounting authorities ensure that all the procurement by other means is reported in the annual report and that they also give or comply with the format that is prescribed. In terms of contract variations and expansions, it is important that the accounting officers ensure that all variations and expansions above the threshold is indicated under this section. The last part that I will be covering is in terms of the financial information. Our departments is guided by the MCS Modified Cash Standard and our public entities is following the GRAP. This format is prescribed by National Treasury to ensure consistency across. And in terms of the modified cash standard, it is annually reviewed by National Treasury and issued for the financial year to give further guidance in terms of the accounting manuals to the department specifically. Also, in terms of the appropriation statements and notes, there is a specific focus in terms of the budget and expenditure. The reasons is important when it comes to the over and under expenditure. And in terms of the statement of financial performance, there is the NT norm that under expenditure may not be more than 2%. In terms of the year-on-year revenue and expenditure trends, that will also further be explained in the notes. Also, in terms of the notes, the losses, debts, and thefts written off is important. And then in terms of the statement of financial position perspective, the reasons for large balances in terms of receivables is something that is very important. Also looking at the aging thereof and what is done by the departments to collect any debt. In terms of the secondary information, disclosure notes, further information to be provided in terms of the amounts that appear on the annual financial statements. Next slide, please. Then also in terms of the secondary information, the amounts not recognized on the annual financial statements, also to be explained, and then specific scrutiny in terms of liabilities, commitments, accruals, provisions, key management personnel, also related parties, disclosure asset management, and then irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, also very important sections. Under accruals, you will also see the 30-day late payments coming through. And then specifically when it comes to the commitments, in terms of what the department budgeted to be spent in future on those commitments. Lastly, then again, to reiterate in terms of the regular expenditure, just in terms of the PFMA compliance and the reporting framework, in terms of if the department contravened any legislation and expenditure has been incurred. This last slide that I will be covering, we did provide an annexure with the detailed changes in terms of the 24-25 annual report guides to the departments and public entities. We just wanted to give a quick snapshot on this slide. So we did categorize it in terms of the 3 categories, in terms of editorial and language refinements. And these changes were mainly to provide clarity and consistency in phrasing. And there was also minor layout changes, structures, and wording just to ensure consistency and understanding. And then there was also just the naming conventions in terms of the committee members that needs to be written out. In terms of the process and the responsibility classification, there was just updated guidance in terms of roles and responsibilities. There was also clarification given in terms of which documents should be used when our departments and public entities do prepare their annual their annual reports. And then there was also an expanded description in terms of the internal audit and audit committee roles. This one also specifically filtered onto the content update, which is the last part of the changes, and we specifically highlighted in bold the internal audit and the audit committee amendment sections and additions. Besides the other changes, this one was the big change that came through to please note. So this was specifically in terms of the key activities and objectives of the internal audit and audit committees. Also how the audit committee, the composition thereof, their meetings, and also the remuneration. And there was also a change in terms of the audit committee report requirement. And then lastly, just replacing the outdated references. Thank you so much, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you, Sorel and Ilham. Just in terms of conclusion, Chair and members, taking into account that one of the functions of the Provincial Treasury is oversight on financial management and to ensure there's good governance and performance across our entities. And of course, we do that with various fora that we engage with our entities. And particular from this year onwards, there will be a focus on a value for money. So that's something that we've also pulled in. And again, of course, we'll start with the 26-27 budget process. And of course, our focus is always about responsive planning and budgeting. Part of our function is also to ensure that we've put tools in place for the departments to actually monitor and report on budget and expenditure. And hence, there's a huge focus from the Provincial Treasury on financial systems, in particular data and enablement. And of course, to conclude, Chair, is building a good relationship with all the entities that we can during the course of the year, and not only at the end of the financial year, look at financial management issues, deviations, and to what extent that we can deal with that. And of course, basically also including, the relationship with the Auditor General on that. So, Chair, thank you from our side.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the team from Provincial Treasury. I think what has been provided here is a very exciting guideline to these annual reports that our members will be reading over the next few weeks, and no doubt making notes for when in readiness for the deliberations that take place in regard to all of the departments. So thank you very much for setting that out. I'm now going to hand over to members for any questions and clarification that you might need. And I'm just looking here within the chamber, and then after that we'll go onto the online platform. Member Boyson.
Chair, mine is probably a simple one to the learned colleagues, but it's just for my understanding, Chair. When is an irregular expenditure material? Because when we look at the statements and engagements with the AG's office, we'll see this amount, this department has X millions in irregular expenditure. And for us, not knowing maths, it looks like, gee whiz, this is a huge amount, but then somebody says, no, was not material compared to the size of the budget, etc. And one of the reasons, Chairperson, also during COVID, just to explain my question, during COVID at a municipal level, we spend money on any other thing that is prescribed in the law that they had to deal with saving lives during COVID. We did things that was not in our mandate. But the AG was still happy with it, but from where I'm sitting, I knew for a fact this is irregular, but it's an instruction that we need to save lives, use the money for this instead of that, and it comes back to what would constitute a material irregular expenditure for my own satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Boyson. I'm going to hand over to Member Masipa, who joined us after we started. So perhaps if you could just introduce yourself at the same time.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, members, and good morning to the department. My name is Noko Masipa, for record purposes. And really thank you for the presentation. My first question really relates to the Schedule 3A and Schedule 3C public entities. How many do we have in the province in their categories? If you can maybe touch on that to just assist us as members. Maybe, if you can name quite a few, that would be great. The second question is obviously relating to on your role on oversight, on fiscal policy and conditional grants and so forth. What have been the observation, especially with regards to this delay of budget process, and how did it impact, in terms of economic activities in the province? Reports are indicating that SARS collection will be far lower than the expected, collections. I don't know if you have also, made some observation in that regard. And obviously, the recommendations with regards to how really the catch-up is going to happen, especially on conditional grants that could have probably had a larger or bigger impact in terms of the economic activities. And I think the other question is relating to what we just heard over the media, that the Department of Culture, sports, culture, and whatever, is cutting funding to all these activities that we have got, like the Jazz Festival and so forth. And we go into this budgeting process. Have you made some observations that should worry us as members in terms of the adjustment that we are going to do, and what are some of those things that we need to worry about. The last question obviously relates to your work ensuring that obviously the plans or the budgets are aligned to, provincial, the government, the budgets is aligned to provincial plans. Let me put it this way. We've got obviously the issue of the AGOA, and G4J has been reviewed or revised as such to ensure that, we are aligned in terms of the budget, the targets. But I think the question really is there a way that you foresee an additional allocation that you might be recommending to ensure that, we are able to keep the momentum in terms of job for growth, growth for jobs, and ensuring that we keep the unemployment as low as possible and grow the economy in the province. Chair, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Member Masipa. Any more questions here from within the chamber? Then we can go on to the online platform. Mr. David, so it doesn't appear as if there are any questions at this stage, so I will hand over to the Provincial Treasury team.
I have a question.
Just a moment. I believe that Member Nkondlo has her hand up. So I think you can go ahead, Honourable Nkondlo.
No, thank you, Chair. I was just waiting for you since you said you'll start with the members in the House. My first question to the department is to please inform us if in the recent past there has not been any members of the senior management, that is your SMS, and middle management that would have been employed by the Provincial Treasury that are from the AG or are from National Treasury. That's my first question. My second question, Chair, is that on Part B that was explained, I think the presentation speaks about significant achievements. Then Part B also deal with service delivery, environment, and strategy to improve underperformance in service delivery. Now, my question here, I want to understand what is the SDIP a framework in which to determine what is that service delivery issues that the department needs to respond to? If so, could that SDIP be shared with us as the committee, especially as we prepare to go to the first annual report, so that what is in the document as a report on service delivery, we can actually be able to see in relation to what was in the plan? And how do members of the public as citizens get to participate both in contributing into what is termed service delivery on their behalf, including what is achievement or lack thereof? Then my next question, Chair, is on Part C. On Part C on governance, I want to understand with the department, to what extent is risk management, which is one of the elements that they need to report into, a political consideration? And I'm raising this because there would be matters that would be in the sphere of politics because government in any way or government departments operate in such, which are things we pick up as service delivery protest, as coalitions, and all other matters. So I'm trying to understand to what extent are risk management issues also considering the political developments in the province, in the local areas, as one would always pick up as the department or the departments would always raise the national political environment. The next one is on the fraud and corruption. How should we, and I'm going to ask this question also to AG, how should we understand the fraud and corruption compliance reports that we would receive in the annual report that speaks about, corruption-free environment, zero tolerance on corruption, and fraud, but then post breaches gets to be understood or presented in the public as matters that are investigated in general. And I'm not raising any specific, I'm trying to source an understanding of how are we supposed to understand what is called fraud and corruption free environment as it would be reported and under this governance section. But there will be post that there will be breaches that are there about this tender process. For example, there was a massacre in the Department of in the Provincial Department of Education, whilst the matter of fraud and corruption would always be in the report saying there is a fraud and corruption free environment. Maybe just help me to understand what that means. My last one, Chair, for this round is on this part C on internal audit, the summary of audit work, which is what I think the colleague was mentioning. We had asked this in the last annual report period, and the AG confirmed around the management letter, which is part of the summary of quarterly audit work that gets to be done between the department and the AG. And my question is to Provincial Treasury, would we receive the management letters of the various departments and their entities, including of yourselves, in this annual report period that we're going to be discussing? Will those management letters that you would have received from the AG and you had been discussing with the AG be available to members of the standing committee, this one and any other, as and when they are required? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. Member Mbombo, I see your hand.
I've got earphones, but I just want to check whether you can hear me so that I can change. Because sometimes I speak and then I don't get here. Can you hear me first?
We can hear you, Member
Okay, then.
Member Mbombo.
All right, thank you very much. I suppose there's such a noise here. I've just two questions. In terms of the AG report, whilst overall all the departments they have performed well, but there are two, which is the education and the NCT Cathedral, where we'll find that they are still in the yellow. With the education, the issue was I wanted to have this understanding. The issue is about the contracts that are approved by not approved by not the person who's designated to approve them, and then they ended up being extended throughout. And then the other issue, the cathedral, I wasn't sure about it, but I'm just making an assumption, probably so related to the non-financial statements. But for Department of Education, I think it is also it's coming back again. It was 23-24. It was the same issue. Despite that, they will have covered actually for this term. I mean, for this budget year under review now, they've covered almost 95% of their targets. So one will see the targets 95. Just make a comparison. Infrastructure had 89% in terms of their targets, yet they they had a unqualified with no findings. I think so. But with the education, it's keep on having findings. But when you see that the targets have been met, you will have thought that actually all is well until you hear again about the issue of the contracts that are not signed by the designated person. At what extent are you looking at this? Especially it's a repetition sort of for the education. For Casita, I cannot recall actually exactly what is the problem around it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Mbombo. Then we have Member Bryant, and then after this round, we will then hand over to Provincial Treasury. Thank you, Member Bryant.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it was more a question of clarity, maybe to yourself. My understanding is that we asking questions of clarity on this, as opposed to the detail on the actual annual reports. Is that correct? So this isn't we're not expected to ask questions now on the actual annual report itself.
No,
eh?
not
Okay.
at this stage. That,
All right.
that will come within.
Okay,
each
no, because I was
department.
just listening to some of the questions and I was getting into the details. So, okay, great. Thanks. I'm covered.
Over to you, Mr. Smith, and your team.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and members. So there are a couple of questions for the AG, and they still need to do their presentation. So, as far as the member Boyce and material irregularity is concerned, I will ask the AG to respond to that. As far as the management letters, member Nkondlo. From the provincial treasury side, our viewpoint is always that the management letters needs to be requested from the departments. Of course, as a provincial treasury, even if we want to give it to the committee, we need to get the approval from the departments. And then the third one on Member Mbombo, I think that will be covered by the AG. Just in terms of the schedule ANC, we've got about a 9 schedule 3C and then 2 schedule 2 institutions within the Western Cape. As far as the oversight and fiscal process is concerned, including the budget aligned to the provincial performance and additional allocations, I will ask Victor and Malcolm to respond to that. Just as far as employees from National Treasury and AG for the last year, I can't recall a member Nkondlo, but we will make sure from our side. I can't recall that for this financial year that we've appointed anybody from either the National Treasury or the AG. As far as the risk management is concerned, so basically. Driving risk management is a shared services to the department of the premier, where all the departments are basically assisted with risk management. And part of that process is identifying transversal risks. So you're talking about political. I rather would like to call it environmental risks. So as part of that transversal risk focus is what is happening within the environment, particularly from service delivery perspective, and some of the issues that you mentioned in terms of unrest and those kind of things. That's part of the analysis of the environmental risk, and those risks are then being put through the provincial top management committee to peruse, and then if accepted, then those will become areas of concern that will be done transversally. So maybe just to indicate to you, if we talk about political, in our case we indicate environmental, that will be driven from a provincial top management perspective within the province. As far as fraud and corruption is concerned, you're well aware that that is one of the areas that we're driving in government, not only in the Western Cape government, to have a government that's free of corruption, and hence also within the department of the premier, we've got the forensic audit component. So when there's any indication of possible corruption, it runs to that particular component. that that will have to investigate, and that is then between that particular component and the accounting officer of a department, and there are quarterly sessions between that component and the relevant department, and as also part of the audit committee process that needs to be reported, and eventually some of the discrepancies needs to find its way into the report. But I think from the provincial side is always to aspire that we do not have any of those cases, and hence the message is that we need to be corruption free. I just, if maybe Victor and Malcolm from your side.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think there were 4 questions that I noted that I'll just quickly comment on. The first one being implication in terms of some of the delayed budget process on conditional grants. I think the impact that we've noted to date is the late transfer of conditional grants to department, which impacts on timely spending in terms of the departments. I think the Department of Agriculture provincially has raised those concerns that because they get conditional grants late, they are not able to implement some of their plans for the year. So I think that's the main concern in terms of the late receipt of conditional grants. But it is an issue that we had raised with the national departments that are doing the transfer of conditional grants in terms of the impact that it's having on departments such as your agriculture in the province. The second one was related to some of the likely impact in terms of the shortfall in SARS collection. I think how, as a province, we need to respond to that before maybe talking about what national is doing. Is firstly to intensify revenue collection. I think we are now working on a own revenue enhancement strategy to make sure that we try as much as possible to improve revenue collection in the province. And secondly, it's the focus on efficiency as well as value for money. I think this was also articulated in terms of the circular that we've issued, so budget circular number 1, in terms of the provincial approach, that we need to focus more on efficiency, on value for money, as well as on impact, as a way of responding to some of the possible shortfall in terms of collection nationally. But nationally, how National Treasury is responding, they've introduced what is known as TARS, which is targeted and responsive savings. So they are going through each of the portfolios and identify those programs that they believe are not adding value, and savings can be achieved in that regard. So they are implementing that as part of their budget process. The other one is the expenditure reviews. So they're also ensuring that the expenditure reviews that has been conducted are also implemented as part of trying to achieve savings for the national budget. As far as the impact on conditional grants, at this stage, we don't know. It hasn't been communicated to us if there'll be any impact in terms of either equitable share or conditional grants at this stage. The third question was mainly on the cut by Department of Arts Culture in terms of festival. I think also this one, Chair, hasn't been formally communicated to us. There was a TCF that was scheduled for today, which has since been cancelled. That was going to focus on division of revenue, provincial equitable share, local government equitable share, as well as adjustment estimate. So because it's cancelled, we still don't have an idea in terms of if there's going to be an impact in terms of conditional grants as well as equitable share. So I think the communication we received was that National Treasury needs to finalize their macroeconomic outlook as well as fiscal framework before they can proceed with that TCF. The last one was on alignment of budget to provincial priorities. Chair, it is correct what the member raised. I think yesterday we issued budget circular number 2 precisely to guide departments in terms of that alignment, to ensure that there is alignment between what they are going to put as a budget proposal to the priorities of the province. I think as a guiding document to the budget process, it is still the PSP of the province. So as Treasury, we need to make sure that the budget support the priorities of the province as well as the department. So we are going to start next week with the budget policy engagement, where we'll be engaging with different departments, executive authority, accounting officers, as well as CFOs, just to have that discussion in terms of policy issues, alignment to policy issues as part of the budget process, Chair. I hope I've answered all of them.
No, thank you, Victor. There was also a question from Member Nkontlo on the service delivery improvement plan and to what extent the members can have access to that. So the service delivery improvement plan, it's part of the APP of departments. So if you want to see what departments have included on the service delivery plan, you will get that information in the APP of departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I'm just looking at members to see if there are further questions, both within the chamber, and it certainly doesn't appear on the online platform as well. I see Member Nkondlo's hand.
Thank you for the responses, Chair. The one part that was not answered in the last question on the service delivery improvement plans is the contribution or the input of the public. If the colleagues can at least just speak to that. And thanks for the information to get the management letters from the varied departments. My follow-up questions, Chair, with new question is that in the response, I think by this DDG Finance on the alignment of budget to provincial priorities, I just want to understand whether that alignment includes the medium-term development plan that the provinces are also expected to implement those priorities. So I just want to understand that. And then I want to understand on part D on HR, what is the meaning of BBBE performance management? Maybe if you can explain to me just to understand what does that element mean. And then on that, I see sort of agreements with unions. I just want to understand, because perhaps over time I have missed this in the annual report content of that section, especially around employee representatives, employee organization representatives that exist in this department. Is it information that gets to be included, whether in a particular department there is an employee organization, be it a union, or there isn't, including, I think, what has been raised there as sort of agreements that have been made with them. Okay, so I just wanted to just make follow up on those, on those, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. Then Member Masipa.
Thank you, Chair. On Tuesday, the report we received on Pero was that the economic outlook for Western Cape is 0.8% for 2025 and 1.3% for 2026. Maybe in terms of the answer that I was looking for is that maybe to touch on this economic performance, whether you are factored the grant allocations and all these other factors, the noises around the festival cards and cultural support events in the province as such. If you can talk to that, I'll really appreciate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Masipa. I see Member Mbombo.
It actually member Kondo reminded me. The PT submits the whatever related to the fiscal to the National Treasury so that to make an input to the National Finance Minister medium budget policy statement, which we ended up for the Western Cape government one, which was released. Part of the focus areas is on safety and violence prevention, in addition to where the focus, where the policy statement for the Western Cape, it has been more on supporting the businesses so that they could be able to employ more people and all of those. But again, I want to focus on the violence and the safety. So at what extent you reflect, because there will be the next one that's going to be released for the 2025 midterm budget policy, and already by June or July, you will have submitted or contributed to what the national minister is going to deliver for his later this year. So at what extent you granulate in terms of following the money in regard to the promises that will have put it up in the midterm budget policy statement, more specifically on the issue, two things on the safety, plus also in the issues related to removing people from the poverty. Having member Noko and Masipa has already alluded to the payroll. Part of the payroll is about the state of poverty, which is still has gone up. Sorry, which has gone up. At what extent you are looking in terms of assessing how you will have achieved the promises you made in the midterm budget policy in regard to following the money. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Member Mbombo. I'm going to hand over to the Provincial Treasury team.
Okay, I'm just going to ask Victor to respond to particularly the questions on the alignment, the payroll, as well as some of the other budget-related issues that were requested.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think the first one was whether we also look at alignment to the MTDP. The answer is yes, Chair. In fact, if you look at the PSP for the province, I think to a larger extent, it's already aligned to the MTDP 2024 to 2029. You look at the three priorities on the MTDP, it's inclusive growth and job creation, poverty reduction and cost of living, capable, ethical and development state, which are also aligned to the PSP. But the answer, Chair, is that yes, we look at alignment to both national as well as provincial priorities when it comes to the alignment of the budget to priorities. The second question was in terms of how do we factor in the issues, mainly the issues that come from payroll. I think slow economic growth, it's one of them, as well as spending on the priorities. And I did indicate, Chair, when I responded earlier that as part of the budget process, payroll fits into the policy discussions that we are going to have with the departments. So the policy discussion we are going to have, it's primarily, Chair, going to focus on that to say, because the economy is not growing, because there is under collection in terms of SARS, how then do we, or what impact that does it have then in terms of the plans going forward as the departments as well as Treasury. But also I did indicate that from our side as Treasury, in terms of factoring in the impact of slow economic growth, as well as other issues that members raised, is that our response has been that we are now going to focus on intensify revenue collection. We are now going to refocus our departments in terms of value for money, as well as impact. We are going to focus on efficiency measures to make sure that we stretch every rand to be able to deliver on priorities. And also the issue of reprioritization, I think that's also one of the issues that we are going to, discussions we are going to have with departments in terms of then, in view of the economy not growing, in view of the under collection at national level, how then do we reprioritize to make sure that we are still able to achieve the priorities of the province? So that is how we are going to impact on that. Conditional grants, Chair. They are awarded by national departments. So I think the minister has made it very clear that as part of our interaction with National Treasury, we need to make sure that we protect, firstly, the provincial equitable share, and secondly, we protect the conditional grants that are going to the departments so that there are no cuts. But at this stage, Chair, National Treasury hasn't made final decision, as well as the national departments. But our position, as articulated by the minister, is that we need to, every platform we use, to make sure that we protect the equitable share to the province, as well as we protect the conditional grants. And that's what we are doing, Chair, in this platform. And I believe that once TCF is reconvened, that's going to be the position from the province, that as much as possible, we need to protect the equitable share as well as conditional grants, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just two questions that were asked by Member Nkontla. Member Nkontla, the BBBE performance under Part D, that's incorrect. It's actually it's a mistake from our side. It's under Part C as far as BBBE compliance is concerned. But thank you for that, and we will rectify the presentation. The second issue is on the units. Member Nkontla, in terms of the prescripts, each and every department need to have a committee that deals with labor, and those committees are represented both from the employer side, but also from labor side, and normally they meet on a quarterly basis. Now, some of the issues that would be discussed and of course find its way in terms of a report, particularly if there are changes within the departments in terms of restructuring, and part of the process is that needs to be consulted with labor. So that we know that that the consultation have taken place and whether there's agreement or not, and what the impact will be. So naturally, some of those issues, major issues, will then find its way within the annual report of departments as well. Of course, as far as wages are concerned, that's not discussed at the or decisions are not made at the provincial level, although some of those issues that happen at the national level will be deliberated. But as far as decisions making are concerned, that is a national competence. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those responses. I still see Member Kondlo's hand. I think if you can just wrap up your last questions there, Member Kondlo, so that we can move on to the next briefing after this. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. It's not a new question. It's just to request the department not to forget the public involvement or input into the SBDIP. That's the question that has not been answered.
You can go ahead, Peter.
Yeah. Member Nkontla, I think that will be a question for department. From a provincial treasury, we assume when the departments put that in the APP that there has been consultation with the public, but I think that those questions should be directed to the partners. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think that sums up that. I think we've now reached the end of this particular briefing, and we can now move on to the next briefing by the Auditor General. This briefing will then be in a closed session. And I think just to allow the YouTube channels to be shut down, I think we'll have a short 5-minute comfort break in the meantime. Anybody who just needs to stretch their legs, and then I think we can resume again at 10:20. So anybody who wants to stretch their legs perhaps can do that right now. Thank you. has been closed down. Provincial Treasury, if you would like to leave, you certainly can, but you're most welcome to stay as well. So, excellent. I'm going to hand over then to the AG's team and to take us through the briefing that they have submitted to us, and that will then deal with the audit outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. It is with great pleasure that the Auditor General of South Africa is presenting the Western Cape Provincial Government audit outcomes for the PFMA 2024-2025. It's for the period ended 31 March 2025 to the Budget Committee. I think it is a opportune time for us to stop and reflect on the outcomes as well as
The second one, Chair, AG spoke of a testing method that they would have used with local government to test public participation. If AG could just share exactly that, so that one can just look at what it is and how does it indeed, help bring out the public participation contribution through local government. So one is interested in that. And the last one is that the AG made reference that they would have spoken to the Speaker and the Secretary regarding some of the support that could be provided. I'm not sure whether they could then be able to share with us, that detail of what exactly were those recommendations to the Speaker and Secretary's office. Those are the three suggestions from my side.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think that is certainly valuable. What I also get the sense is that within the standing committees, we need to be looking at, first of all, those quarterly reports, that we try and catch those quarterly reports as soon as possible after their publication. So that being the one aspect. The next aspect, and I think it was something that did come up last year as well, are the draft APPs, in terms of having that level of insight, that the standing committees get that level of insight. And I think what goes with that is also the looking at the various risks then that the accounting officers would have in, and that ability then to ensure compliance with the level of legislation that they need to be undertaking. I'm not sure. I'm just looking if there are any other factors that we need to be looking at.
It's covered, Chair.
Member Boyson, you think?
I think you've covered with the recommendations from Member Gondlo as well.
Yeah. I think everybody happy with that? Going once, twice, and three times. So thank you. That concludes that. The meeting that we had on the 30th September, I know I've seen draft minutes on that, but I still want to just have a look on possibly on a little bit of wording there, and we can then adopt those minutes at the later meeting. So I think thank you very much. I know it is Friday. We've gone from morning to afternoon, and therefore we need to start thinking about the weekend now. So with that, I'm adjourning the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance today.
Thank you, Chair.
you.